Tonight on NewsWatch, Russia says it will remain on the ground in Ukraine. CBN News is there with a look at what the U.S. calls an act of aggression.
Plus, winter weather shuts down the nation's capital. More on the snow system causing trouble across parts of the East Coast.
And an exclusive look at the biggest Christian film to hit movie theaters in a decade, Son of God. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Russia is issuing an ultimatum. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Get out or face a, quote, military storm. That's the warning Russia is giving Ukrainian forces in Crimea, telling the Ukrainian military that they have until 5 a.m. to pack up and leave their own peninsula. George Thomas brings us more on the situation from Ukraine.
The area in southern Ukraine known as Crimea now belongs to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
What has already happened is a brazen act of aggression.
Within hours of the orders, Putin's forces invaded and took complete control of the Crimean airspace, airports, highways, ports, and regional government, without a single shot fired yet.
We are on the brink of the disaster.
Crimea is of huge significance to Russia. The Russian Black Sea Naval Fleet is located here. But Putin's ambitions go beyond the Crimean Peninsula. His next target could be eastern Ukraine. Over the weekend, pro-Russian demonstrators took control of key government buildings in several regions, replacing European Union flags with Russian ones, and called for union with Moscow.
We want Russia to hand out Russian passports to citizens who want them.
Ukraine accuses Moscow of orchestrating the takeover to justify an even wider invasion. 45 million people live in Ukraine. Nearly 8 million of them are ethnic Russians. Putin claims the new Ukrainian government installed after the ouster of Viktor Yanukovych is fascist and will persecute ethnic Russians. Putin says it's his job to protect them.
We want to live in peace, but we need security from Russia.
The crisis is even dividing some families.
Putin is not going to leave us alone. My sisters in Russia are offended at me and are yelling at me not to speak ill of their president. But I say to them, then your president shouldn't touch us.
For many Russians, Ukraine is viewed as part of the motherland. So when thousands of Ukrainians took to the streets 103 days ago demanding closer ties to Europe and the West, Putin wasn't too happy about it. Russia hasn't recognized the new pro-Western government in Kiev, and most experts believe Moscow will try anything to make sure it fails. This weekend, Ukraine's new but unstable government put the country on a war footing, ordering up all military reservists to active duty. This as Russian troops urge Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their weapons and pledge allegiance to Russia.
George Thomas just left Crimea, and he joins us now from Kiev with more. George, how credible is this threat by Russia?
Look, I think we all need to take this threat very, very seriously. Russia has said this, in essence, is a military storm. The sources from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, however, within a few minutes of that going public, literally around the world, the spokesman for the Black Sea naval operations down there in the Crimean Peninsula said, quote, this was nonsense. But look, what's happened in the last, pretty much since last Saturday, you have two military bases operated by the Ukrainians, and they are totally surrounded by Russian forces, and that is a serious concern.
John Kerry arrives in Kiev Tuesday. What does he expect to achieve, George?
His biggest goal tomorrow morning when he arrives in the capital city, Kiev, is to, in essence, let Ukrainians know that he supports, that the United States has the full support, that they will have the full support of the United States, this new interim government, but also to attempt to tell Vladimir Putin that, listen, we stand with this new interim government, and we're going to try our level best, short of sending troops, to find some kind of a peaceful resolution to the crisis here on the Crimean Peninsula.
Okay, George Thomas, our senior international correspondent. Stay safe, George. We appreciate all your work.
Thank you, sir.
That's right. We're praying for you, George. Well, here at home, spring officially begins in a few weeks, but winter is not going away quietly. Freezing rain, sleet, and snow are stretching from the mid-Atlantic up through Pennsylvania, closing schools, airports, and local governments. Our Caitlin Burke has been following the storm, and she joins us now outside in the cold with more. Caitlin?
Wendy, the bad weather here is really just getting started. It's kind of a rain, sleet, snow mix right now, but the country's midsection has already taken a beating. More than 100 million Americans are again experiencing nasty winter weather. Freezing rain and heavy snow have been seen in many central and eastern states.
So much snow. I hadn't seen the grass in like a month. And then it rained last week and I saw the grass. Now it's snow again.
Crews are struggling to de-ice planes at airports. Just this morning, nearly 3,000 flights were canceled. The bulk of those cancellations at airports in Washington, New York, and Philadelphia. The roads are also a nightmare. In Oklahoma, ice caused a 40-car pileup.
This car over here, it was just sliding, and they asked if I could reverse. I couldn't even reverse, because if I reversed, then I'd hit this car in front of me.
I threw it in four-wheel drive, and even with four-wheel drive, I was spinning.
Ice and snow made for a slow morning commute from Maryland to New York. And before this system is through, forecasters are predicting anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of snow. The worst of this storm is expected to move out of the area by the end of the night. But then the bitter cold settles in. Over the next several days, record low temperatures are expected from the Midwest to the East Coast. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
One of the areas hardest hit by the winter storm is the nation's capital. Paul Strand has this look at the system that shut down Washington today.
Officials declared a state of emergency and federal offices across D.C. closed. But this time, politicians weren't to blame for the government shutdown. It was yet one more snowstorm that blew in as part of the winter that just won't quit. Before the storm, hours of rain fell in the nation's capital, making it almost impossible for crews to sand and prep the roads. When the rain ended, hours of icy sleet started falling. That ice was sealed on power lines and trees after the sleet changed to heavy snow. Add in powerful winds, and you had a situation ripe for accidents and power outages all around the region. Authorities pleaded with people to stay home and off the roads. Most complied, making for eerily quiet scenes all around the capital city that's usually so busy. But others took the weather worries in stride and turned them into opportunity.
But I thought it'd be a beautiful day for a walk, and taking a bunch of pictures along the way. Connecticut Avenue, going over the Calorama bridges and whatnot. It's been beautiful, and just enjoying Washington, a little slowed down for a change.
While some felt right at home in the blustery conditions.
I'm Canadian, and frankly, the snowplows don't even come out for a day like this. This is just average winter weather. It's actually quite lovely, and the fact that it's easy to get around on foot, it's great.
And then comes this news for those who just can't take any more. Another storm is likely due here by next weekend. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from wet Washington.
Paul needs to wear a hat there.
Yes, he does.
Well, in other news, the morning after pill will now be more widely available over the counter. The Food and Drug Administration is allowing generic versions of the drug to be sold without a prescription. The move will make it cheaper for women of any age to get the emergency contraception. And that's causing concern from many who say the drug will be too easy for young girls to access.
The birth control pill is basically the same drug, but this pill is 40 times stronger than the birth control pill. Teva, who is the manufacturer, never did clinical trials on children. We have no idea what it does to their growing bodies.
Disturbing. Well, before the FDA's decision, the generic and cheaper versions of the morning after pill could only be obtained with a prescription because of a deal with the Plan B manufacturer.
Some good news. North Korea has released a 75-year-old Australian missionary after 3 weeks in detention. John Short was arrested February 16th for secretly distributing Bible tracts at a Buddhist temple in Pyongyang. North Korea deported him this morning after he asked for forgiveness and apologized for committing anti-state religious acts. Short is now at the Australian consulate in Beijing. His wife Karen talked to our Gary Lane by phone. She says prayer made the difference.
The prayers of God's people, the support and encouragement has been amazing. I totally believe and know it was God with me through this, as the Lord was with John. I wouldn't trade this experience that I've had for anything.
Mrs. Short says she'll head to Beijing in the morning to meet up with her husband. She says the first thing she's going to do is give him a big hug. Makes sense. And to hear more of Karen Short's interview, you can log on to Gary Lane's blog, The Global Lane, and you can find that at cbnnews.com.
Coming up, how Christians are stepping up to help refugees from the Syrian civil war.
Thousands of Syrians are without food as heavy clashes disrupt the delivery of humanitarian and aid in some regions. The United Nations is calling on both sides fighting in the Syrian civil war to allow aid to enter the city of Yarmouk near Damascus. For about a year, regime forces have been stopping aid to that area, meaning little food or medicine is getting in. More than 100 people in the city have died of hunger or hunger-related illnesses. And the Syrian civil war is creating another crisis in the Middle East. The intense fighting is leading to a new wave of refugees fleeing the country.
Their needs are overwhelming, and Christians are responding. Gary Lane brings us more from Iraq and Lebanon.
Another Syrian government barrel bomb explodes on rebel positions. Innocent civilians caught in the crossfire leave the country in droves. The crisis is perhaps the most severe since World War II, and no end appears in sight. According to the United Nations, more than 2 million Syrians are now registered refugees in neighboring countries. Most live in tent cities like this one, Kharagos Camp in northern Iraq. Fighting between Islamists and Kurdish militiamen forced this widow and her children to abandon their wheat farm. The UN has given them food and blankets, but she says she lacks money to buy fresh fruit and vegetables for her children.
And it's not just northern Iraq where refugees are pouring over the border each day. I'm in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. Refugees are still coming in here. This camp is only 6 months old.
Many of the Syrians living in tents here have yet to register with the UN. So they're turning to Christian groups and others for help. Faiz arrived here from northeast Syria just days before we met him.
The militias were bombing and we were without electricity and water. Our city was surrounded by the Free Syria Army and Jabhat al-Nusra. They are kidnapping Christians. It's a very bad situation.
Faiz's family now lives with his brother Kamal's family, who arrived 6 months ago. A total of 13 people cramped in this small 2-room apartment. Faiz feels safer in Lebanon, free from the militants destroying Syria's ancient Christian community.
They're trying to kick all the Christians out of the country. A Christian friend of mine was working construction, building a government school. They killed him and stole his truck. They don't have any compassion or mercy for us Christians.
But groups like CBN partner Heart for Lebanon are showing much compassion for the refugees. Those like young Mohammed. His family set up this small tent on farmland in southern Lebanon. The tent leaked when it rained, so a Heart for Lebanon worker convinced the property owner to let the family live in this shed. Mohammed stopped attending school more than 2 years ago, shortly after the Syrian civil war began.
He's a good boy, and he wants to go to the school. All 12 years old. He's 12 years old.
Pakistani education activist Malala Yousafzai tours a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. She and others worry Mohammed and his generation may lose any access to education. In 2012, a Taliban terrorist shot Malala as she returned home from school. She's now a global advocate for girls' education. But young refugees need more than education, food, and housing. Many, like 13-year-old Hamid, desperately need medical care. He was born without fully developed legs. Hamid endured a strenuous journey to Lebanon.
There's only one bone instead of 2 bones like the rest of us would have. You can see it doesn't attach correctly down here. That's not how the tibia would normally be on top of the talus. And you have the whole fibula is missing.
Not only did Heart for Lebanon provide Hamid with a comfortable mattress and food for his family, they also helped arrange leg surgery. Now, with more help, Hamid may eventually walk. They're also helping others with war injuries like 18-year-old Faraj. When we first met him last summer, Faraj needed his mother's help walking. Today, he's walking on his own. Faraj nearly died in Homs, Syria, when a rocket exploded in his living room, tossing him like a rag doll from a second-story balcony. The fall broke his arm, and hot shrapnel tore into his chest and back. He says he's doing much better now thanks to medical care and other help provided by CBN partner Heart for Lebanon. I asked if he would like to return to Syria to be a fighter. No, I wouldn't want to be a soldier, he says. He'd prefer to return to work in the clothing industry. Faraj wants Americans to pray for him.
Pray that God will heal me and that I will walk normally.
Perhaps one day, all the way from Lebanon, back to his Syrian home. From the Bekaa Valley, Gary Lane, CBN News.
Up next, CBN News sits down with the producers of the box office hit, Son of God. Welcome back. The Christian film Son of God had a strong box office opening this weekend, bringing in $26.5 million and finishing a close second behind the thriller Nonstop. Analysts say with numbers like these, Hollywood is sure to make more religious-based films. 2 more Bible stories are already set to hit theaters later this year. Noah, starring Russell Crowe, opens this month, and Christian Bale will play Moses in Exodus in December. Mark Burnett and Roma Downey are responsible for bringing the life of Jesus to the big screen. They produced Son of God.
Ephraim Graham recently talked with a Hollywood power couple about the movie.
A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel.
The Word became flesh.
From humble birth to miraculous resurrection, Jesus' story becomes larger than life in the film Son of God.
We just knew that the Jesus story needed to be presented in a standalone experience.
Co-producer Roma Downey is best known for her role on the hit television series Touched by an Angel. Her husband and partner Mark Burnett is the creative genius behind reality shows Survivor, The Voice, and Shark Tank. They came up with the idea of this film while producing the wildly successful Bible miniseries for the History Channel.
While we were making the series, Roma looked at me and said, "This footage is so amazing. The special effects are going to be so big. This should be on the big movie screen." So we started this 2 years ago, way before the series came out.
Who do you think I am?
You are the Son of God.
You can't have known this by what you know of me, Peter.
Jesus hasn't been on the big screen for 10 years since Passion of the Christ, and his whole life hasn't been seen on the big screen for 50 years since the greatest story ever told. So we just thought this was an opportunity to bring Jesus to the big screen for a whole new generation.
The couple shot the film on location in Morocco with an international cast that includes some familiar faces from the Bible miniseries, like Diogo Morgado as Jesus.
My son.
Don't be afraid. Everything is possible with God.
Roma, you play the mother of Jesus as you did in the miniseries. How do you prepare to be Mary?
Oh, gosh, it was just such a privilege to be able to step into the role. I had never fully considered what the mother of Jesus might have been feeling, particularly in those scenes at the foot of the cross. There was a lot of prayer that went ahead. I just tried to bring a mother's heart to the role, to feel what a mother might feel, and it was a profoundly moving experience.
Son of God hits the big screen at a time when Hollywood is experiencing a faith revival, so to speak. A new Hollywood film is in production in the Holy Land. And there's already lots of buzz about Noah, set to hit theaters only weeks after Son of God's release.
Our Father in heaven feeds the birds of the air. How much more will he give to you?
This film is also getting a box office boost, with megachurch pastors like Joel Osteen and Rick Warren leading a theater takeover campaign. buying out screens in multiple theaters.
Put God first and everything else will follow.
What matters is how good is the movie, and we've now been to 20 cities and done preview screenings, and people are loving the movie experience. It's epic, it's lots of action, it's dramatic, but it's also so intimate.
How did this impact your personal lives, both of you believers? How did this affect your walk as you're making this and telling the story of Jesus?
I think the only thing could ever happen to anybody who believes in Jesus as we do, as you're working on this, is to get deeper and deeper. And also, we're married, and it's been a great, great journey for us.
We're still speaking to each other.
I'm married to an angel.
No, we always joke that a lot of couples can't even work in the garden together, and we've been producing now together for almost 5 years with the Bible series and now with Son of God. But it's just been great. It's deepened our friendship, deepened our marriage, and deepened our faith as well.
And a deeper faith is their prayer for all who see the film.
Tell us, are you the Son of God? I am.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Washington.
What are you saying?
Up next, what one teacher thought was a normal school assembly turned out to be so much more. Well, surprises are usually not welcomed if you're planning a wedding, but one West Virginia bride-to-be hasn't found that to be true.
Yeah, fifth grade teacher Jessica Music thought she was attending an awards ceremony for students, but that wasn't really the case.
We're a little title money, and he actually took a different job to spend more time with me, and so we've been pretty title money, and money isn't everything, but it's good. It's going to go into savings.
She can use it for whatever she wants. If she wants to use that $25,000 toward her wedding, toward honeymoon, anything for her future with her and her fiance.
Wow, so she won a sweepstakes. Well, Jessica said she will use the money to splurge on a nice honeymoon, and whatever is left, she and her fiance will save to help start off their life together. And with $25,000, I think they're going to have a nice honeymoon and a good start to their marriage.
And I think that's a great way to spend it. So
Yeah.
hopefully you only have one honeymoon.
That's
Well,
right.
hopefully it'll last a lifetime, though,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Good for them. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsWatch.
Remember, you can email us your comments and questions at newswatch@cbn.com. Hope you'll join us next time.